Hey, Seth Miranda here for Adorama TV, and this is the new Tamron 35-100mm f2.8 Di3 VXD. Oh yeah, that's a lot, and there's a lot to talk about. This is on a Nikon Z8 because it is for Nikon Z mount and Sony E mount. So it's a full frame lens. It's also cool to see some third-party action happening on the Nikon Z mount. So very cool. Before I get into what this lens is and what we kind of did with it, let me set a little bit of a stage for you a little bit here, okay? A little bit of a scene. It is the end of the day here in New York, early evening, and it just starts torrential downpour. It is golf ball size raindrops just assaulting the city and everybody in it. And the energy of the city is completely changing. And then I get a message from Kevin Wilson, who is a great photographer, a concert photographer, also shoots for the FDNY. And he was on Coffee Creators on this channel. I'll put a link down to his episode down below. But he also runs a tattoo shop here in New York, down in Soho. And he says, hey, the shop is having an anniversary celebration. We're doing black line work, flash sheet stuff for homies. You want to come get something? It's all New York themed stuff. I said, absolutely. I'll be right down there. On my way out the door of Adorama here, I get handed this Tamron 35-100mm f2.8. And I say to myself, well, I guess I'm going to go photograph myself getting tattooed. So that's basically what was going to go happen. Before I get into how I applied it in that situation, because I think it's a pretty unique situation, and I think it also shows a lot about this lens and maybe in a unique way. I'm not just saying that, I promise. Let's talk about what's going on with this lens overall, and then we'll see how it applies going forward. Right off the bat, 35-100 is a very cool focal range. We're used to things like 24-105 across the systems, and that's usually an f4. And if it's a 2.8, which is kind of like a unicorn lens out there, they're priced up there. 2.8 lenses usually boost up the price, but this not so much. It's pretty accessible. And while 35 is not as wide as 24, it's a great focal length, especially for something like street. And then you got something all the way up to 100 if you want to get into portraits or you need something with a little bit of extra reach. Plus, since it's full frame, you can do things like set it to a crop mode and get a little bit more of a tighter field of view while you're shooting, which is something I did when I programmed this function button to be either full frame or APS-C. So you got that custom function button right there. And right next to that custom function button, you've got this mode switch here. It's like custom 1, 2, and 3. What's that about? Well, that is one of the most slept on features I think Tamron has. See, they got this USB-C port on their lenses, and it's not just for firmware updates. No, it's actually so you can plug it into Tamron's utility software and you can kind of customize the lens, which is what these presets are for. You can set the 3 different presets of how you're customizing it. So let's say you want something like linear or non-linear focusing. You can have 1 is linear, 2 is non-linear, or you want different sensitivity of that focusing ring, or you want different directions of that focus ring because Nikon goes opposite of the rest of the industry and you want to switch it back to some other position that you are more familiar with. You can do that and you can preset it to this switch, which is very cool. 35-100 is one of those lenses that if you're going on a trip, you can take one lens. It's got enough versatility in it to get you through whatever you're doing. And the 2.8 is therefore to give you that extra stop of light as opposed to an f4, and maybe even that more shallow of a look with the 2.8 versus the f4. And it's got a great minimum focusing distance, which came in handy for me when I was photographing myself get tattooed. See, at 35 millimeters, you're looking at a little over 8.5 inches of minimum focusing distance. And at the long end, 100 millimeters, you are looking at 2.5 feet. And that might sound crazy, but if you know, 105 lenses usually are about a 3-foot minimum focusing distance. So having just a little over 2.5 feet at 100 millimeters, you're kind of getting a little bit of an edge there. It's kind of nice to see. This lens is also pretty compact. I mean, lightweight and small in actual size and footprint in your bag, in your hand. I mean, just to give you an idea, of how compact this is a 67 millimeter filter thread size for a 2.8. That's wild, but it is very easy to carry on. It's one of those things that's probably easy to travel with as well. And I also want to say that 35-100 is also a great focal range for someone if you don't know what type of photographer you are yet. If you don't know what kind of lenses you want to get into, this gives you all that focal range option while keeping a constant f2.8. So you can then go after a while say, you know what? I tend to shoot a lot at 50. I tend to shoot a lot at 85, around there. That's when you start looking at the prime glass and things like that. So it's a good lens to keep you versatile, but it's also a good lens to kind of figure out who you are as a creative overall. And I'm talking about photo and video. So let's talk about what actually happened here. I am making my way over to Soho. I'm getting out of the train. Crosby Street's right there. And I'm just, the tattoo shop is just across the street. I can make it and not get totally drenched, right? I get in that elevator, it opens up, and boom, right there, I see Kevin. And to welcome me. And I'm like, yo, what's going on? He goes, your artist isn't here yet. And I go, cool, because I want to get a feel for this lens before I start putting it to work, because I don't know what this lens feels like. So that's exactly what I did. First of all, the space is very low light, and that's typical of tattoo shops sometimes, because the working light that they shine over the client is really the light you're going to be working with. It's got color fidelity usually, and it's the brightest point. So I knew right away I'm going to be working in spot metering probably. But before he got there, I was like, what can I snap around on this floor that I can get a sense of this lens? And I saw this Statue of Liberty sculpture. So I said, cool, let's see what this feels like for portraits. Again, I'm in the ambient light here, so my ISO shot up a little bit here, but these are all shot at the 100mm because I knew I wasn't gonna be shooting at 100mm while I was getting tattooed. I'm not gonna get that distance of 2.5 feet from Pierre while he's tattooing me, trust me. So you get a sense of the quote unquote compression of the lens, if you want to call it that. And you also get a sense of the fall off of the focus at 100mm at 2.8 of when it's sharp to when it falls off to out of focus. Plus, if you look behind the Statue of Liberty head, you can see these bokeh balls exploding nice and big. Those are tiny city lights out of the window. So they're very small. So you can get a sense of just what happens with that 2.8 and the shape of that bokeh, because it's a 9-blade aperture, and usually the more blades, the rounder it is, but you're getting some pretty decent shaped bokeh here. And I also think that, in my opinion, that the amount of blades, like the diaphragm of the aperture, does kind of shape the texture of the out of focus areas as you close down. So, you know, just keep that in mind as well. So while I'm shooting the Statue of Liberty head, you're getting these faux portraits, right? Like a human face, a human head, like the ratio, size, and all that kind of stuff. Shooting a little bit to the side, seeing how it falls up from the front eye to the back eye, kind of stuff like that. I start looking around the rest of the shop, and I shoot things like reflections of clients getting tattooed, while there's foreground of tattoo artists out of focus. So you can see foreground out of focus, background out of focus, some like longer plane of imaging going on there. And, you know, just playing around, nothing crazy. But then I'm still looking around, I'm waiting for Pierre. So we toasted some espresso, me and Kevin, we get on that couch and we knock it back. And what do you know? Pierre shows up and we get going here. So we see the he shows me a bunch of the flash sheets, and there's a few of them, but there's one that just screamed right out to me. And it was a nice slice of pizza. Forget about it. You know what's up with pizza if you're an OG fan of this channel. You know what's up with the Brooklyn Reflector. You know what's up with me and pizza. I said, this is it. And I also talked him into throwing in the NYC underneath the pizza in the same way that it was on the old Subway tokens with the cutout Y. If you're in New York, you know what's up. And I was very happy to get going on this. Just stamp it on me, slap it into this gap I got on my elbow, and let's go. Well, I wanted to shoot the whole process. I wanted to really see what was going on here. Also didn't know what was my perspective point going to be. I didn't know what I was going to be able to really shoot here with him shooting my elbow, because I'm going to be bent over. My elbow is going to be bent. I'm going to be torqued, twisted. I'm going to be shooting with my opposite hand with my ring finger pressing the shutter. I was like, what is going to happen here? Before we got to that part though, I got a chance to shoot the actual flash sheet, some top down stuff, you know, the machine, the little caps of ink. And I slowed my shutter down just to see the actual motion of the ink droplets splashing as it hit the cap. And you can see the linear depth of field here, meaning where it's in focus and how quickly it falls off to out of focus, being that close at f2.8 in this ambient light setting that is very low light. So I had my shutter slowed down to around a 60th here just to get that splash to show up a little more. I like that kind of movement in my scenes, especially something that's so stagnant like this, like just a tray of stuff, right? So he's getting the machine set up. I figured I'd shoot the needle going through the machine, him holding it, get that shot, and then he's going to go shave me. So now I get a chance to really see, what am I going to do here? How am I going to survive this shot here? Because I knew I was going to be twisted up and shooting with the other hand and just using fingers that usually aren't pressing that shutter button to do that. Well, when he started shaving me, it gives me that sense, right? He has to shave the elbow. So I know the spot I'm at. I know that at 35mm, I've got enough of the frame to tell the story I'm trying to tell here of getting tattooed. So that is awesome. Plus it focused. The minimum focusing distance was not a problem. And that is all I really needed. What was very cool is the zoom ring has such a short focus, such a short throw or travel, that I was able to use my other fingers, like my ring finger, to give me between 35 to 50 and maybe a little bit beyond that for some shots while I was getting tattooed. But that's just how easy this lens was to use. With that short throw, it's not like I'm sitting there having to worry about, oh, I'm going to move the camera too much, or, oh man, can we stop for a second so I can move the zoom ring? Like, it wasn't an issue for me, which was awesome. I was in single point autofocus for most of this. And I say most of this because I did throw some manual focus in there. I'll talk about that in a second. But as far as the 3D tracking autofocus, I want to say, one, the motors on this lens are great. It is really fast and snappy. It was right there. It just was focusing quickly, and that's what I want to see, because it was a small tattoo. I didn't have a lot of time, and I was trying to make some composition happen here that made it worth looking at some anatomical landscapes, some leading lines, some shallow depth, you know, partial of his face, some not. But what I will say is that the tracking worked great. You can see probably in this B-roll that Kevin got that I'm throwing the cursor where I want, which is on the needle, and then I'm recomposing. I'm slowing my shutter down a little bit to get that motion of the needle, about 100th to 200th of a second. I'm kind of hovering around, and the ISO is between 500 and 1600 ISO, depending on how Pierre moved, because he was wearing all black. It was a small light, you know, things were changing on the fly. Now, what I want to talk about the manual focus is, I was able to use the manual focus override while the autofocus is set on the camera. In my experience with third-party lenses or some adapters, if they aren't really for that mount, this is a function that sometimes has a quirk or a bug and it just doesn't want to work. It doesn't want to focus. But I was able to actually use my ring finger and just manhandle and choke hold that focus really quickly where I wanted to be able to see it. I saw the focus peaking, just kept shooting. And then I went back to the 3D tracking autofocus for other shots. So there were some situations where I wanted Pierre's face sharper, just so I had something of him, not just the needle. There's only so many vantage points or frames I can get out of this. You know, some horizontal, some vertical. We do what we can. But the reality is I was going to be shooting shallow the whole way. There's only so much that's going to be focused. I really got to be deliberate with where I throw that focus. And it kind of telling the story of getting this tattoo, and you guys can see what's going on with this lens. Now, I am going to say that with a lens that's a 2.8 and this much focal range, there are going to be some trade-offs when you have such an easier price point that this is at. The thing I noticed was there's vignetting in the frame a little bit, and I actually like that a lot, especially in documentative or, you know, recording type situations. Like this is, I was recording this moment. It wasn't a curated shot here. You know, I just like that ignoring of the corners and kind of focusing in out of the distraction and really getting your viewer right where you're putting them. And with shallow depth of field, you're really putting them, the viewer's eye right where you want it. And the out of focus is just kind of like a supporting role there, right? And then you got the corners that are vignetting, and you're really kind of putting the focus literally and figuratively or mentally of your viewer where you want them in your frame. So I appreciate the little bit of vignetting, but you should know that that's there. And if you are someone that's going to get into this thing for video, I did feel a little bit of focus breathing. So if you're worried about your edges kind of doing some shifting around while you're focusing in a scene for a clip or something like that, just be aware that it's there. It's not massive, it's not crazy, but I do feel that it's there. So I think it's worth noting. But I think that's all totally viable for a lens that's giving you this much range from 35 wide angle to 100mm. I mean, you can go shoot street, then you got that 100mm to give you those portraits on the fly or some reach if you want it. You got the function button to do the APS-C crop if you want it. But these anatomical landscapes, I think there's no hiding, right? We're right up on the subject here. You're seeing how that depth of field falls off, and you're seeing what the 35mm looks like, which is not distorted really. It feels like a good 35mm. It isn't giving me some warped out look that's putting an effect on my frame. It's letting me capture what's in front of my lens, which I really, really appreciate. But overall, I just wanted to give this thing a spin, and I appreciate Tamron for letting me do that. Let me know down below if you guys have any questions about my limited use case here with the Tamron 35mm to 100mm f2.8 Di3 VXD for Z mount. Again, also available for E mount. But again, limited use, so I'll do what I can with those questions. But if you want anything about the specific specs, check out the links down below. The product page is down there. You can see all the stuff, the data, all that kind of things you want to get to know. If you're into the Tamron system or their lenses, let me know what Tamron lenses you've been using down in those comments. I'm curious. But for now, hit subscribe. We put out videos like this every single day. My name's Seth Miranda, and this is Adorama TV, and I will see you on the next one. Later.